We often think goodbyes are loud. A breakup message, a long conversation, maybe even an argument. But the truth is, some of the most painful goodbyes are the ones never spoken out loud. And men, more often than not, are the ones who say goodbye in silence. Today, I want to walk you through 10 signs, the subtle, sometimes invisible ways, that a man has emotionally left, even if he hasn't said a single word. Some goodbyes don't come with closure, loud arguments, or final words. Instead, they unfold quietly, almost invisibly. One of the most confusing and painful forms of goodbye is the one that isn't spoken at all. When a man starts detaching, it's rarely with an announcement. It begins with a shift in presence. You notice he's there physically, but something has changed. He's distracted during conversations, less engaged, and the warmth that once made you feel safe slowly starts to disappear. The texts are less frequent, the calls shorter, and the check-ins that once made you smile now feel like a distant memory. You begin to feel the weight of silence, the kind that speaks volumes. Once the apology has been, there's no longer curiosity in his questions or tenderness in his responses. What once felt like an emotional bond now feels like a polite exchange between strangers. His vulnerability starts to dry up. You used to know his thoughts, his dreams, and his worries, but now he keeps them locked away. It's not just space he's creating, it's a quiet wall he's building. And every time you try to reach over it, you're met with less and less. The most difficult part is that you start doubting yourself. Because he hasn't said anything, you wonder if maybe you're imagining it. You rationalize his distance as stress or distraction, convincing yourself that love hasn't left the room. But deep down, your heart feels it. He's emotionally gone. You feel alone even when he's next to you. You question your worth, wondering what you could have done differently to bring him back, when in reality, he's been emotionally exiting for a while now. Eventually, you notice the future he used to plan with you is now filled with vague answers and solo dreams. He avoids hard conversations not because he fears conflict, but because he's no longer trying to fix anything. In many cases, he waits in silence, hoping you'll be the one to finally say the words he can't. It's a slow and quiet kind of goodbye. One that leaves you not only heartbroken, but also confused and exhausted from trying to hold together something that's already slipping away. And even though he never said it, he left long before he walked out the door. There comes a point in some relationships where the effort simply fades. And it's often so gradual that you barely notice it at first. What once felt like genuine connection slowly turns into routine. The little things, those sweet messages just to check in, the spontaneous calls, the thoughtful gestures, begin to disappear. He no longer surprises you with your favorite snack or asks how your day went with genuine interest. It's not that he's angry or distant in an obvious way, but the energy he once brought to the relationship is missing, and you can feel it in the smallest details. In the beginning, he made you feel chosen. He showed up, made plans, and put thought into making you smile. But now, the conversations feel one-sided. He responds but doesn't initiate. He agrees but doesn't suggest. Slowly, he stops putting in effort not because he can't, but because he no longer wants to. The spark doesn't dim all at once. It flickers quietly through forgotten dates, unreturned messages, and vague excuses. Once the apology has been, and even though he hasn't said anything, his actions begin to whisper what his lips won't. The hardest part is how you start to question your own expectations. You begin lowering the bar without realizing it. You tell yourself he's just busy or stressed, trying to rationalize the gap growing between you. You may even pick up the slack. initiating more, planning more, giving more, just to keep things feeling somewhat whole. But what used to be mutual now feels like an emotional tug of war, and the silence on his end feels heavier with each passing day. Eventually, it becomes clear that the effort is no longer missing. It's gone. What was once a relationship built on connection now feels like something he's quietly trying to escape. The space he creates isn't filled with words or conversations, it's filled with absence. And in that absence, you begin to realize that love should never feel like a job interview where you're constantly trying to prove your worth. The truth is, when someone stops trying, they've already started saying goodbye. There was a time when your emotions were met with curiosity and concern. If something seemed off, he would ask. If you looked tired, sad, or withdrawn, he would notice. He paid attention not just to your words, but to your silences too. He wanted to understand what you were going through, and his presence gave you comfort. You felt seen, heard, and valued, even when you didn't know how to explain what you were feeling. That level of care was part of what made you trust the relationship in the first place. But slowly, that version of him begins to fade. When you speak now, he only half listens. You might express worry, sadness, or frustration, and he just nods. There's no follow-up, no effort to dig deeper or hold space for your emotions. He might look at you, but the connection in his eyes is missing. When you cry, he doesn't reach for you. He simply sits in silence, perhaps uncomfortable, perhaps detached. His silence becomes the loudest part of the room, a sharp contrast to the man who once comforted you in your most vulnerable moments. It's in these quiet moments that you begin to feel the emotional gap widening. The things that used to be normal between you. Shared vulnerability, comforting words, gentle reassurance have vanished. What remains is the sense that you're expressing yourself to someone who has already checked out. You don't want to believe it at first because he's still physically there. But emotionally, he's already somewhere else. His silence is no longer peaceful. It feels like absence in disguise. Apology has been. The hardest part is accepting that he's no longer trying to understand you, not because he's incapable, but because something inside him has already let go. He may not say it, he may not even fully admit it to himself, but his silence tells you everything you need to know. And while it hurts deeply, has been, you begin to understand that you can't hold a conversation alone. And you certainly can't hold a relationship together when the other person has already stopped showing up. There's a kind of goodbye that happens long before the door closes or the final words are spoken. It's the emotional exit, the quiet slipping away of someone who used to be fully present with you. At first, it's almost invisible. He's still there, still showing up in routine ways, but something about his energy feels different. Conversations that once felt alive now seem forced or surface level. His laughter doesn't reach his eyes the way it used to. He stops asking for your thoughts or sharing his own, and slowly, without saying anything, he begins to create distance. You start to notice that you're no longer included in his inner world. He may talk about his day, but only in general terms. The details that once made you feel like his confidant are now locked away. He makes decisions without mentioning them to you, and you find out about them in passing or after the fact. He begins to build a parallel life, one where you're not needed, not invited, and not considered. It doesn't happen out of cruelty, but out of detachment. He's no longer seeking closeness, and that emotional separation starts to sting more than any spoken breakup could. In this quiet retreat, you feel like a guest in what used to be your shared space. He might still sleep beside you, eat dinner with you, or reply when you talk. But the deeper parts of him are no longer within reach. You miss the connection, the sense of being chosen every day. You might try to initiate closeness, spark a conversation, or bring back old rituals, but his responses are half-hearted. There's no spark in his effort, no hunger to reconnect. It's like trying to embrace someone who is emotionally fading into the background. Eventually, you realize that love doesn't always end with shouting or a slammed door. Sometimes it fades quietly as one person slowly moves into a different emotional reality, leaving the other to wonder when the goodbye really began. And while the silence can be confusing, it's often the most honest sign of all. When someone no longer lets you into their world, it means already started living without you in it. That realization is painful, but it also sets you free from holding on to something that only exists in memory. In the beginning, there was a softness in the way he spoke to you. He shared things that weren't easy to say. His fears, past wounds, future dreams. You felt trusted, chosen, and important because he let you into a space not everyone was allowed to enter. Vulnerability created a deep bond between you. It wasn't just about words, it was about feeling seen and trusted, and that trust made you open up too. You felt like you were building something together, something rooted in honesty and emotional closeness. But as time passed, that openness began to fade. He stopped talking about the things that mattered. He still spoke, yes, but only about safe, surface level topics. Work, the weather, small updates that didn't reveal much. When you asked how he was really feeling, he brushed it off or changed the subject. You felt the shift in his tone and noticed the walls going up. It became harder and harder to reach him. The man who once welcomed you into his heart now seemed guarded, closed off, like you no longer had access to that part of him. This change can feel especially painful because it doesn't come with a clear explanation. You wonder if you did something wrong, if you pushed too hard or asked too much. You try to recreate the moments where he used to open up, hoping he'll relax and trust you again. But the silence remains. It's not just the lack of words, it's the absence of emotional safety. You start to feel like a stranger in a place where you were once deeply valued. The conversations become predictable and the connection starts to feel more like a memory than something alive. The truth is, when a man pulls back his vulnerability, it's often because he's pulling away emotionally. He may not say it directly, but his guardedness tells you what he's no longer willing to express. He no longer sees the relationship as a space where he wants to be deeply known. And while you might long to fix it, the hardest thing to accept is that love cannot thrive where openness no longer lives. Vulnerability is not just a part of love, it is the heartbeat of it. When it disappears, what remains begins to feel empty, no matter how much you wish it were otherwise. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from detachment. In the early days of the relationship, disagreements may have led to long talks, apologies, or a genuine effort to understand each other. Even the conflicts felt like a sign that both people cared enough to fix what was broken. But now, when something feels wrong, he doesn't argue, he doesn't push back. He just stays quiet. At first, you might think it's maturity or calmness, but deep down, it feels different. It's not resolution, it's absence. When someone stops engaging in conflict, it can seem like they're being patient or trying to avoid hurting you. But often, that silence hides a lack of investment. He doesn't want to fight, not because he's keeping the peace, but because the outcome no longer matters to him. You bring up something important, something that hurts, and instead of leaning in, he pulls away. He nods, gives short answers, or says, "Let's not argue," but you can sense that he's not interested in truly working through it. That avoidance creates distance so heavy begins to feel like you're carrying the relationship alone. You try to bring things up more gently, hoping he'll respond differently, but the result is the same. The silence starts to feel like a wall, cold, still, and unmovable. It leaves you second, guessing your feelings and wondering whether it's even worth expressing them at all. Eventually, you find yourself holding back not to keep the peace, but because you're tired of trying to reach someone who clearly doesn't want to be reached. The lack of conflict isn't comforting anymore. It's isolating. What once felt like a partnership now feels like a quiet exit you're being left to witness in slow motion. He may still be present in your daily life, but emotionally he's taken a step back that he has no intention of reversing. The avoidance of conflict becomes just one more sign that he's already letting go. And the hardest part is knowing that while you're still trying to hold things together, he's already made his peace with the idea of letting it fall apart.